I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And then, are you doing your thingy? Oh, sure. That's fine.
The city charter.
Well,
I have one. Yeah, right here. We go again. I'm back.
okay. So we will have roll call. We have Mr. Bremer here, Mr. Clayton here, Miss Shandell,
Here.
Miss Rose,
Here.
Miss Jill,
Here.
and Mr. Nixon is here. Let's see with either one of these. Dumb. All right. We also have Miss April, our clerk. Miss Darla, I'm trying to see out of either pair of these glasses. Our city manager, and Mr. Moore, our city planner.
Planner guy.
All right, do we have a motion to approve the minutes from the meeting from June 2nd, 2026, and the special meeting, our training?
Make that motion. I'll support.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay, motion carries. We need an approval of tonight's agenda.
We'll make that motion.
Okay, any further discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. We are on to public comments. Those citizens wishing to speak on agenda and non-agenda items will be allowed a maximum of 4 minutes each to address their concerns. This is the only time during the meeting that citizens are allowed to address the planning commission. Please state your name and address for the record if you would like. Miss April, is there anyone online? Okay. Seeing none, I will close public comments. And I will look to my members for conflicts of interest and ex parte communication. None? Okay. Tonight we have a couple of public hearings. And who wants to start us off on Article 5, nonconformities?
So I will start with this one. This is unchanged from the last time that we looked at it, which was last month. What you have in front of you in your packet tonight is just the sort of cleaned up version. I think I got all the red lines out of here. So just to kind of go over this briefly again for you, this completely rewrites Article 5 of the zoning ordinance, which deals with nonconformities. We decided to do this because right now you guys have about a quarter of a page addressing nonconformities, and it's just a more complex issue than what the ordinance currently addresses. So that left Darla and me sometimes with no guidance and no idea what to do when some unique situations arose with properties that were damaged or didn't meet a setback or something like that. So what we've done here is basically expanded the entire chapter. So just to kind of get into the meat of this, I'm not going to read the whole thing or anything because we've been over this a few times, but 32585 sets forth nonconformities for all types. So we have nonconforming structures, nonconforming lots, and nonconforming uses. Those are all kind of three different types of nonconformities, and these provisions really address all of them. Addresses kind of the fundamental issues like when something is considered nonconforming, things like that. So if it was lawfully established prior to the zoning ordinance being in effect, then it's going to be protected. If it was unlawfully established, then it's not going to be protected, and the city's going to be able to take action. The overwhelming majority of nonconformities in the city are going to be legal nonconformities that we will work with people on, but we do have to allow ourselves the ability to tackle something if somebody does something unlawfully. So a couple things here. So non-conforming statuses, or a non-conforming status runs with the land, so it's not something that changes from. You can't. Yeah, if it's a non-conforming with owner A, it's going to continue to be non-conforming under owner B. That continues on, and it does not affect their non-conforming status if property is bought and sold. It happens all the time. And then obviously, if someone is going to add like a fire escape or a wheelchair ramp or something like that, we're not going to consider something like that an unlawful expansion if we're trying to accommodate accessibility, safety, things like that. 32586 addresses nonconforming structures. So these are mostly going to be buildings. So think of a nonconforming structure as like a house that's too tall or it doesn't meet the setback or something like that, where the building itself doesn't comply with one of the requirements of the zoning ordinance. So this allows for the expansion of nonconforming buildings horizontally but not vertically. And most importantly, what we spent a bunch of time talking about was what to do when a nonconforming building burns down, catches on fire, or something like that happens. And so here, this allows for a nonconforming structure to be rebuilt, to be completely restored to its original nonconforming condition, even if it's 100% destroyed, as long as they do it within 1 year and they don't increase the degree of the nonconformity. So if a house was unlawful because it was only 3 feet off of their property line and it burns down, they can put it right back so it's 3 feet off of the property line again. They can't put it 2 feet back, but they can still maintain that 3 foot as it was before. And the intent here is to be able to work with people, because what we're seeing is that sometimes people can't get mortgages or they can't get insured when they can't build their house back if something catastrophic were to happen. So that's what's addressed in item 5. Item 6 draws a distinction between that and something where a person voluntarily demolishes their house. So if they do a bunch of work on it and they demolish the entire thing, well, then they have to put it back in a way that complies if it's 75% or more destroyed based on the replacement value. So that's looking at a voluntary project. So if someone, again, they knock off the whole back of their house and they want to work on something, that's fine. But once they trip over that 75% threshold, then the entire building would have to come into compliance. So that means that a property owner is going to have to be mindful of what they're doing and what their non-conforming status is before they undertake a project like that. I don't think this is going to come up a lot, but we have seen this come up sometimes in the past where people think that, oh, if I want to make my house a lot bigger, I'll tear down the whole thing, but I'll leave this one wall standing up, and then I'll build everything else bigger. And they use that as a way to sort of like enable themselves to have a much larger structure. And so that's not really what we're trying to accommodate here with something like that. We're really trying to accommodate people who have, had some sort of catastrophe happen. So this allows them to build back. 32587 addresses nonconforming uses. So this is perhaps a building that might be compliant, but the use itself isn't permitted in that district. So think about a commercial use in a residential zone or vice versa. That could be considered a nonconforming use. So number 1 says that a use shall not be enlarged, extended, intensified, or expanded in a way that increases the nonconforming nature of the use. Um, uh, if someone does something like adds a deck or a patio or a stairway, that would not be considered an expansion of a non-conforming use. So we have to think about what it means to expand a use, and that's not always an easy thing to kind of wrap your head around. So we want to make some kind of clear statements here that if someone wants to add a deck, that's not expanding your residential use unlawfully. If you're adding a bedroom or two, it would be. But adding a deck or a patio or something like that, that would not be considered an unlawful expansion. A couple other things here. So under number 4, if a non-conforming use is abandoned for longer than 1 year, it cannot be reestablished. So this happens from time to time. We'll see a commercial business that had been there for a long time. Maybe it's in like a residential zone. It closes. It sits there vacant for a year or 2 or 3. After that year lapse, they cannot then reestablish that original non-conforming use. The only thing they could do with that building would be to engage in a use that complies with the zoning district requirements. And so what does it mean to abandon a use? That's what's listed under A through F. So if you disconnect your utilities, if you stop maintaining your property, if you've taken down your sign or the whole thing has fallen into disrepair, if you've taken out parts of buildings or gutted the inside of it so it's obvious that you're not going to be using the property anymore, that's all going to be considered by the city and an intent to abandon. And that's what starts that 1 year clock from running. Number 5, a non-conforming use could be changed to another non-conforming use, but only if the zoning board of appeals approves it. So that's kind of like a use variance, right? If you're going from one use that doesn't apply to something else that doesn't apply, you're still establishing use that isn't otherwise allowed in that district. There may be some situations in which that would make sense. So that's why we have this language in here that would allow the ZBA to permit that in certain circumstances. And then again, if a conforming building or structure containing a non-conforming use is damaged or destroyed, again, that could be fully rebuilt and reestablished regardless of the extent of the damage. So 100% ability to build back in that situation. Any questions on those 2 items so far? Okay, moving on. So 32-588 is non-conforming lots. So that's think about a lot that is too narrow or too small for its district. In those cases, we still allow them to build on those properties as long as they can meet their setbacks. And also, if they have 2 lots that are side by side and each of them individually are non-conforming, then we basically force a combination in number 4. So if you have 2 lots that are way too small, but the same person owns them and they're right next to each other, we would treat that as 1 lot for zoning purposes. And if they came in to want to build a house on it, they would be able to build 1 house and not 2. And the last section is 32-589, non-conforming sites. So this is kind of a thing that we've added here. We don't see a lot, but I kind of like the idea here where if somebody has a commercial business that they want to redevelop and they don't have enough parking or their landscaping isn't quite up to par, sometimes it's in the city's best interest to allow someone to reoccupy that building and reuse that property without having to spend $100,000 or more on repaving a parking lot, installing curb and gutter and landscape islands and trees and all this other stuff. So 589 is intended to address those kinds of situations. So we always want to discourage something that makes it more non-conforming and to allow things that bring it closer into conformity. So that's kind of addressed under number 1 and number 2. So number 2, again, if they're making improvements for parking, adding landscaping, screening or fencing, even if it doesn't fully comply, if it's moving it in the right direction, we're not going to consider that any kind of expansion of a non-conforming structure or non-conforming use. And number 4 states that, when there's a building expansion or a change in use to the property, the site shall only be required to be brought into full compliance to the extent necessary to accommodate the changes. So if somebody wants to add on to a building We're not going to make them like repave the entire parking lot and landscape the entire thing. If they have to add parking, that new part that they add would have to comply. We're not going to make them go back and sort of retroactively improve the entire parking lot because again, that's going to be imposing a burden on people that they're probably not going to be able to afford. When we're trying to encourage development or redevelopment of properties, some of these regulations can be kind of a hindrance to that happening. Then number 5 gives fairly broad discretion to the zoning administrator or planning commission to require site improvements if existing conditions are deemed unsafe by any official charged with protecting the public health, safety, or welfare. So building official, some other public safety official, fire department, for example, something like that. In that instance, we could require a site improvement if the parking lot is so bad that it's, impassable or people can't get into the house or something like that. We would have an opportunity here for the zoning administrator to say, look, you have to bring this into some sort of a minimally acceptable and compliant condition. And with that, that's all of the changes to chapter 5. Happy to answer any questions if there are any. If there are not, then this was noticed for public hearing. So you would open and close the public hearing and then make a recommendation for approval or disapproval to the city council.
I have a question.
Yes.
I know this is the 425, but out, say, by the dollar store, the parking lot is just hideous.
Yep.
Is there anything we as a city can tell this property owner it's time to fix this parking lot?
So we can check. We actually we're dealing with this exact same topic with another client right now. We ended up actually adding some language into their zoning ordinance that requires kind of a base level of maintenance for their parking lot. So we'd have to look at the specifics of the ordinance. The ordinance does require that parking lots be paved. So if it's deteriorated to a point where it's like mostly gravel in large areas, then yeah, we might be able to say, look, we can't consider this a paved service anymore because it's cracked and fallen apart to the point where
It's mostly big holes.
yeah. So in that case, if it's within the city and subject to your zoning ordinance, then yes, we might be able to take a look at that and see if we can send them a letter or something and have them again bring it up to patch it up and get it paved. The zoning ordinance doesn't have like specifics in terms of thickness or anything like that for the parking area, but it does require that there be pavement and a hard surface of some kind. So we could look at that and see if they can make some changes.
You ought to drive out there once. It's just,
Yeah.
if I was the person who was renting that building from whoever owns that parking lot, I'd be furious.
Yeah. I mean, it can be really tough especially with some of the commercial landlords and they're far away and it's hard for them to maintain and keep an eye on these properties. And obviously asphalt is expensive and it's hard to get contractors lined up, but that's part of what they've agreed to do when they have a site plan approved. So we can take a look at it and come up with some options.
Hopefully.
Unfortunately, Miss Rose, that parking lot and that drive next to Burger King, I believe since I've been on planning commission, it has been torn up and fixed twice. The only thing I can think of is there's a spring underneath there because they fix it and it just tears up. That's the only thing, in my opinion, is that there is something underneath there that is causing it to do that.
It's always in the same spot.
Right.
That take me out Holcomb's.
And yes, there is a way, as Mr. Moore said, that we can send letters, but we had this problem with the property where Little Caesars is. And unfortunately, the owners of that building were out of California. They sent letter after letter after letter, and they were ignored. It took somebody to buy the property for us to be able to say, can you please fix that? Okay. So unfortunately, a lot of these places, they are out of other states. And you can beg and plead, but it kind of falls on deaf ears sometimes, it seems like. And eh, I don't know. And
Yeah, I mean, there are things the city can do to compel compliance. It's just a matter of how aggressive it wants to be in doing
Exactly
that and
what I
how
was
many
gonna tell
resources
you.
it wants to spend on enforcement, right? I mean, that's part of the reality of how we figure it out. And we have to make sure that the zoning ordinance has enough
Mhm.
teeth and support in it so that we can say you are in violation of section 32 dash whatever. If we don't have that support in zoning, then that makes that all the more challenging. So like I said, we can take a look and see where we can go from there.
Okay, so I am going to open the public hearing for the amendment to Article 5, nonconformities. Anybody online, Miss April? Okay, all right, I will close the public hearing for Article 5, nonconformities. And then would anybody like to make a motion to city council besides me or? Okay. So I will make a motion to send to city council our notice, to amend chapter 32 zoning of the Code of Ordinances to the city of Cedar Springs and to amend Article 5 pertaining to nonconformities. Is that good? All right. So any further discussion? Look good to everybody? All in favor, say aye.
I,
Somebody, we need you need a second on the motion. Was there support?
Oh, yeah, I forgot. We need a second to support. Yes.
Did we do both public hearings then?
Right.
No, not yet. We just did the first one.
Okay. So the the 32 was that
No, he was right.
section we just did. Okay.
So the motion was to recommend adoption of Article 5 nonconformities,
Right.
right? So was there support to the motion? Okay, Jill supported.
To amend chapter 32 zoning of the Code of Ordinances of the city of Cedar Springs and to amend Article 5 pertaining to nonconformities. That's what I was.
He's reading the title of the amendment. Yep.
All right, any further discussion? Oh, all right, all in favor, aye? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Yay. Okay, we will open. Should I just open the public hearing for the next one? Before he even starts?
Either way, otherwise, I mean, if you want, I can give you an overview of where we are with this next amendment too, and then
That's
you
fine.
can open the public hearing once we kind of go through it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So this next one, we've been talking about a little bit. So this would amend the zoning ordinance to permit multifamily dwellings as a special use in the R1 district. So section 1 of the amendment just adds multifamily dwellings to the list of special uses in R1. Section 2 amends 32-697, subsection J, and this is a section in your zoning ordinance that has these specific standards for special uses. So under subsection J, we have multifamily now listed as one of the special uses. The requirements for any multifamily dwelling as a special use in the R1 zone is going to be subject to these additional standards, plus whatever else is required by the district. So number one, An applicant is going to be required to provide scaled elevation drawings depicting architectural features. The R1 district of multifamily dwellings shall be designed to look like a one-family dwelling and include architectural details found on a majority of the dwellings in the neighborhood. So this is one where, because the R1 is a primarily single-family district, we're fine with multifamily, but we don't want it to look like a multifamily, bunch of garages facing the street kind of a thing. We want it to be designed in a way that it really fits in with the character of the other houses of that district. Number 2, maximum dwelling of 12 units per acre. Number 3, a garage serving a multifamily dwelling shall be recessed or placed to the rear of the dwelling with side or rear entry. Number 4, off-street parking is required to be provided in accordance with the schedule of parking requirements in 32-617, and we'll get to that in a minute. Number 5, they must be on a lot of 10,000 square feet with a width of at least 80. And then not more than 5 units per building. And that's the stuff we talked about at the last meeting. And then for the parking requirement, the one change we had here, so this is an excerpt from your parking table. So you'll see under section, under use, number 1, residential, under line B, multifamily dwellings and townhouses, it's 2 per unit. And then we added this little sentence that says in the R1 district, a minimum of 1 space per unit, but not more than 3 spaces per unit shall be provided. That's that kind of discussion we had at the last meeting where typically 1 is going to be enough, but if for some reason someone can provide 2 or somebody wants to provide 2, this gives them the ability to do that. But we're not going to end up with a situation where we have, an entire rear yard turns into a parking lot kind of a thing. So that is all we have for that. That one, again, same process as before. Happy to answer questions. You can make changes, of course, open the public hearing and accept any public comments if there are any. I'm assuming not. And then you can make a recommendation to city council on this one as well, if you are so inclined.
All right. Any thoughts, questions?
Me? Does this mean that from this point on, if somebody wants to build a duplex or more in the R1, they can build a new building? Or they could remodel?
Yes, but they would have to come in here in front of the planning commission and get a special use permit, have a site plan and all that. But yes, this would allow for, so this doesn't address duplexes because those are already permitted. But 3 family, 3 units, 4 unit, 5 unit building could be allowable
The special use.
in R1 with a special use permit. Yep.
Does it allow folks to remodel a single home into duplex or
Yeah,
beyond
so that's already permitted right now
in the R1?
in R1. Yep. So somebody can already convert a single family into a 2-family. Now, if they went from 2-family to 3-family, they have to come in here for a special use permit, but it gives them an avenue to do that. Up until this, the answer would just be no, you can't. And there's nothing further that they could do about it.
So now it will be allowable.
Yes.
So what happened does this have any effect on the homes that are already registered as 2-family, 3-family? 4-family?
No. So those do not have a special use permit. So they would basically be legally non-conforming, but it definitely helps those cases. So what the previous city manager was doing with those letters that he was sending to those people that had, 3-family or, 4-family units in R1 is it was basically saying, look, we know that you did this illegally, probably, but we're going to continue. We're going to consider you to be a legally non-conforming use. We're not going to, pursue you with enforcement. We're not going to make you tear it down or anything. We're not going to make you kick people out. We're going to allow it, but understand that, you are now non-conforming. It was kind of like giving you notice that we know what you did, but we're not going to punish you for it. So this, I think, takes it a step further and says what you're doing is allowed. They don't have a special use permit, but at least, we're to the point where if they wanted to make a modification to the building or make some improvements, they would need to come in and get a special use permit. But if they had been there for a while, that might be an easier thing for them to do because the neighbors have already been used to them. They've already been there operating for a while as a legally non-conforming use, and this would allow them to be brought further into compliance. The other thing that's important with the special use process is that it does require notice to neighbors. So everybody within 300 feet gets a letter that would advise them that, a person at a certain address wants to establish a 3 or 4 family building. And then we could accept public comments, and then you guys would have some discretion to approve it or to turn it down if it's not going to work.
Okay.
The other thing, if you look at, number 1, these are scaled elevation drawings. So this is not somebody just comes up here with their piece of paper and says, hey, by the way, I want to take this house and I want to make it,
Mhm.
no.
Yeah.
That you have to go through, one of the companies, you're gonna have to pay the money to actually show what it's gonna look like, and that it is,
Safe.
safe, that it meets, code and all that,
Mhm.
just like we do with any of the businesses.
Mhm.
So that's one of the good things. And being able to see and know that that is taken care of. It's not just a drawing on a piece of paper.
Sure.
Yeah, one of the good things about this, to your point, is that historically, these things happen without the city knowing, which means that they probably don't have, furnaces and, plumbing might not be up to code, electrical might not, all that stuff we don't know because there's no process, there's no building inspections, there's no electrical, there's no mechanical, nothing. So by running it through this process, not only is the neighborhood made aware, but then that also then refers them to the building department. We know what's going on.
Mhm.
And then it'll help to create, livable, safe properties for people to live in within the city. So,
Yes.
yep. Yep, addresses will be changed, the whole thing will work better with just because we know what they're doing and how many units are in there and all that kind of stuff.
So if let's say the neighbors in that area don't want a duplex or triplex or whatever, do they have the opportunity to object to that
Yeah, absolutely. So
with
there'd be
the
a public
special
hearing.
use hearing?
The
Yep,
300
yep. With that hearing, they can come in here and come to the mic and they can have their 3 minutes and say whatever they want.
Okay.
And it'll be up to you, like it always is, to determine how much of an impact that makes and whether or not it's going to satisfy the requirements of this
Mhm.
section that we're looking at tonight.
Mhm. Sure. Good.
Miss Shendell. I know when we were talking about like the verbos and stuff, is this like, you feel okay because this is more housing and stuff? Okay. I'm just looking at you because I know we talked about, we didn't want to take away, but I want to double check.
Right.
Because I know you were talking about taking away from the single use housing or whatever, but
Right. I
But
think
we're
we
still-
do need housing.
but we're adding more. Okay. Well, that's why I'm looking at you. I'm like, because you felt strongly. I want to make sure. All right. Any other discussions at all?
Do you feel like this protects the areas? I know you had an issue with that. With the bringing the
Mr. Kathleen?
multifamily, yeah, bringing multifamilies in. Do you feel like it protects them enough? Okay.
Mhm. All right, I will open the special hearing for the amendment to sections 32-214, 32-697, and 32-617. Number 1, to allow multiple family dwellings in the R1 zoning district as a special land use, subject to additional regulations and parking requirements. Is there anyone online? To the one person in the audience, do you have anything? Just want to make sure. All right, I will close the public hearing. for our amendment for those sections. And would anybody like to make a motion?
You don't want to do it.
I can do it. That's fine. I will make a motion to send to the city council a motion to amend section 32-214 special uses in the single family residential R1 district, section 32-697 special uses F through M, and section 32-617 would that be subsection 1? Schedule of the parking requirements of chapter 32 zoning of the code of ordinances of the city of Cedar Springs. Will that work? Okay. Do I have?
I'll support.
Okay. All right. Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Great. All right, we don't have any site plan reviews, but we do have a request from Mr. Clayton about a tiny home discussion. Who would like to lead that?
Just looking for another way to bring affordable housing. The typical way you get affordable housing is just let your regular house go into disrepair. Don't have any cost and you can keep the rent. I think. I don't know if anybody else has seen them. You've seen them. A lot of communities doing this so you can bring in a brand new house and still keep the rent very affordable simply because the highest square footage. Opportunity, and not that you're gonna do it in every neighborhood, but. You know, I don't know this town, how you folks do, but there's probably some opportunities. Even some of those spaces we talked about in the changes along, you know, the outskirts of Main Street. I think we want to get Mr. Moore's spin on that, kind of see where that might fit into this community. To make that available to the landlords if they want to start investing in some new structures.
Yep.
What-
What criteria will they?
What size is a tiny home considered? Like how many square foot wise?
I've seen 200, 300 square foot. You go to Tokyo and you live in 1 by 6 miles.
I was gonna say it too, but yeah.
Yeah, I think that's part of the discussion.
Yeah, so
I'm feeling what the brief structure is.
Yeah,
No, you have to be.
yeah, so this is something that a lot of communities are looking at, and in your packets, on page 22, there was an excerpt has been provided from the table of dimensional standards that are in your zoning ordinance. And so if you look at the bottom half of that page, under subsection B1, you can ignore my chicken scratch next to it. So there's a required floor area for every single family dwelling, right? So if you're going to build a single family dwelling anywhere in the city of Cedar Springs, it has to be at least 1,000 square feet, which, maybe depending on your perspective is not that big, or maybe it's tiny. I don't know. But when we think about the cost of these things, the construction costs, you're looking at between $200 and $250 a foot right now, before you even are talking about buying land. That's just the cost of building the house. So if you just do the simple math, a 1,000 square foot house, maybe it has an attached garage or a shed or something like that. You're starting off between $200,000 and $250,000 before you've even bought land. Land is another, I don't know what a city lot goes for around here, but $10,000 or $20,000 maybe. You're pretty much at a minimum of, in that $230,000 to $270,000 range for the absolute smallest, tiniest thing you can possibly build in the city. And so when you think about that, it's like, okay, well, is that really all that affordable? Maybe not. And most typical houses start out at larger than that. So when we talk about affordability, a fairly modest house by most standards is, 1,300, 1,500 square feet. Again, you're looking at 300 to $350,000 just as a kind of a starting off point. And so what some communities have done is looked at this and reduced that requirement of 1,000 square feet for your dwelling and dropped that number pretty significantly. I've seen them go as small as, 400 or 500 square feet. So you talk about like a 20 by 20 or like a 24 by 24 would be 476, or a 24 by 32 would be like 768 or something like that. So, looking at ways to get housing more affordable by allowing for smaller units. There's a lot of really interesting research out there that talks about how single family dwellings are the things that are the most popular to build. 80% of the houses that get built or something like that, I don't know the number exactly, is all single family house, but only about a third of the population actually wants to live in that. So there's this mismatch between what's being built and what people actually want. And so a lot of people are looking to live in either multifamily buildings or live in just something smaller. They don't want to have to maintain a 3,000 square foot house with a, 2 acre yard or something like that. And so finding ways to enable different housing options, more affordable housing options is something that cities are looking to do. And so I think this is where Clayton's getting at, is that we're not going to sit here and mandate that you cannot build a big house. But we can also make it possible for someone to build a small house. If they don't want to live in 1,000 square feet, if they only want to live in a 600 square foot house, right now the answer is just no, you can't do that. Go away, come back when you have a house that shows a minimum size of 1,000 square feet, period. That's the answer. And so that's kind of what we're looking at, is let's reduce the minimum so that it enables people to live in smaller units. Whether or not they take advantage of that remains to be seen, but at least the option's there. At least the government is allowing someone the flexibility to build something a little bit smaller. So what we would do if you guys wanted to proceed is we'd probably look at amending this table, look at the single family dwelling, take that 1,000 square feet with a minimum of 650 on the ground floor and knock that number down to whatever you want, 400, 500, 600, something like that. We also have a minimum of 900 square feet for a 2-family building or a townhome. So that could be reduced to something smaller if somebody wanted that. And then under the multifamily on the next page, 23, you have an efficiency unit is 350, a 1-bedroom is 600, a 2-bedroom is 800, and a 3-bedroom is 900. That's actually not too bad. But we could also do some research and see if those could be reduced a little bit as well. Because when we are looking at applications for, like, let's say someone wants to split up a house in R1 with a special use permit, these unit size requirements that we have listed here might preclude somebody from doing that because it requires too much space that they don't have. So, we want to be thoughtful in how we do this, because amending the zoning ordinance to allow multifamily in R1 is great. But if this other requirement makes it impossible, then we're not really moving the needle forward very much, if at all.
I have a, so the other question that I had, I'm in support of something with this. I don't exactly know what it is. But I'm looking at the table right above it where it shows like minimum or maximum lot coverage and percentages. But we looked at like possibly reducing that. Obviously you'd still have to maintain your setbacks.
Yep.
So I would have to do math on that to figure out exactly what size lot you would need for like a smaller house. But we definitely have some smaller lots that would fit well with a smaller house.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of wondering too, with these smaller houses, what I've seen from some Habitat for Humanity builds is they, take an existing lot and even divide that up to just give it a very small yard that's easy to maintain with a relatively small
Yep.
house. I just had some put in next to my Cadillac house actually, and they look quite nice.
Mhm.
So I was just kind of curious if there's a way, or if that's a bad move to try to reduce that number.
So the lot coverage in there is a maximum. So that would still be unaffected here. So like in R1, there's a maximum lot coverage of 30%. So that prevents somebody from building something that's overly large, not overly small. We probably wouldn't have to change the lot coverage limitation if we make the minimum size smaller, because if they're at, 10%, who cares? That's fine. It's only when they get too big and bulky and we have stormwater issues and everything else is when that lot coverage calculation comes into effect.
I'm almost thinking about it the other way in this scenario because at least from the research that I did walking into the meeting, it seemed like a lot of people who want those smaller houses actually want the smaller yard to go with it. They just want to not deal
I see. Yep.
with that aspect of things.
Yep.
So it's I don't know if this is a good analogy, but it almost seemed to me like maybe like I think the term would be like a mobile home park, more of those rules, if that makes sense, where I think they don't meet those minimum lot requirements that we would put in an R1, right? And I think this is almost the
Right, yeah,
same
those are
thing.
those are totally separate set of standards and they are pretty, so we could look at, so there's a few things. You could look at reducing setbacks. You could look at reducing lot sizes in those districts. So like in your R1, your minimum lot size is 8,712 square feet. That's a 66 by 132, which is the very historically, traditionally platted. The city lot in Cedar Springs is a 66 by 132. That's 8712. Typically, those cannot be divided further. So a couple of things that we could look at to sort of further move that forward would be to either look at accessory dwellings, or there are communities that have adopted something called a platted lot split ordinance, where you'd have to adopt a special ordinance that allows people to split previously platted lots, which is a thing I just learned about a few months ago. So that would allow them to sort of divide the property into smaller chunks and then put smaller houses on those. So that's something that that might work, that more probably addresses what you're thinking about.
Okay.
I think that, um, when you're saying these smaller homes, what are you picturing, Mr. Clayton?
Most of the ones I've seen are actually just prefabs. They just drop them in and it's all neighborhood full.
Okay, because the ones that I keep picturing are the ones I've seen, which they're built on trailers and they're pulled in like a trailer and then they're set up. And I was thinking, okay, so maybe the mobile home parks put in, they could do something with smaller. But I think before we would really have to look at the restrictions on those. So somebody can't just, say, oh, look, I put up a, 20 by 20 shed and it's a house. No. So, stuff like that. I know that we have ordinances against
Yep.
that, but you know how people will.
Yeah, so a couple of things with, if it's something that gets brought in on a trailer, it could basically be considered a mobile home. Those we don't really have a lot of jurisdiction to regulate those because the state regulates mobile homes through the Manufactured Housing Commission. We also have a section in the zoning ordinance in our general provisions that sets forth minimum standards for all dwellings that are outside of a mobile home park. And so right now it requires that the minimum width of any dwelling is 24 feet. So with that standard in place, the smallest that you could permit would be a 24 by 24, which would be 476. Unless we reduce that 24-foot dimension down to something smaller. It also requires that they, be firmly attached to a foundation, that they, comply with the state construction code, that they be aesthetically compatible in design and appearance with other dwellings within 600 feet. So if somebody wants to drop a steel container on a lot, maybe not everybody would be comfortable with that. We have to say, okay, there would be some areas where they'd kind of have to no, you have to sort of respect the character of the existing fabric of the city in those cases. So we do have some additional standards in the zoning ordinance to kind of help address some of those issues.
Okay.
I
Um,
think a mobile home is considered something that has axles underneath it. Whereas the drop-in ones that are brought in on a trailer and set on a foundation is a
Yeah,
different story.
if it becomes
Sometimes
permanently attached like a modular, that becomes, they permanently attach those to a foundation and then they're not
Mhm.
mobile anymore, right?
And
Then,
no axles.
yeah, and then that's all gone.
Yeah.
Contrast that with something that's in some of your existing manufactured housing parks where those are right now, they could be picked up and moved with relatively little effort compared to what you would do for an actual stick-built house, right? So that's kind of the distinction there. But yeah, so one of the questions, and I don't really know the answer to this yet because I haven't dealt with one of these, but a lot of people ask about shipping containers or something like that, where they bring in a very small house and just drop it on a foundation and you build a whole community full of those. I don't know if that would be very different from a manufactured housing park. If the state would get involved in that at all, or if they would just say, hey, look, we don't care because this is not our jurisdiction. I just don't know how we would handle that at this point in time, and I have not had to deal with one yet, or got to deal with one yet, I guess, depending on your point of view.
We got all that land on West Street. We can just set them up a little, little house community over there.
Yeah. The other thing that might work, and I haven't researched this in your zoning ordinance, is that you might be able to allow for some kind of a tiny house community concept through a PUD. So PUDs allow for a ton of flexibility, right, in exchange for some benefit to the city. So why couldn't that flexibility be small, tiny homes, small lots? And, the city kind of works with the developer to get something built that it wants. I don't know off the top of my head if your PUD even allows for that kind of a concept to happen, but it is a tool that we might have to make some changes, but it is a tool in zoning that you could use to get there without having to amend, every zoning district and open the entire city's zoning code up to every conceivable tiny house plan you can think of. So there's a few different options we could explore depending on how you want to take this.
Well, thank you for bringing that to our attention. I never even thought about, those things. Any other discussion on them right now? We'll just keep it on our, keep it on a burner there and thinking about it.
I say, so do you want us to do anything at this time, or do you guys want to let it kind of marinate for a month and give me some? So we can do some research, we can not, I mean, I guess that's up to you guys, but if you want me to come back with something, let me know. Otherwise, we can just kind of keep this on the agenda for now and you can think about it. Either way is fine.
I'd like to see if there are other communities in our area that do have them. Cause like I said, it's more housing is better, but I'm just curious if there are other municipalities that host that kind of.
Okay.
Is there an area within our limits that we could make a tiny home community? I mean, is there,
Yeah.
is it like we could section this part of the city would be like, the tiny home community? Is there like surface area in the city that we could do that? Because if there's not, then there's really.
There's not that many. There's a handful at most parcels where that would be a realistic option.
So it could be something we had to like special use or.
Or like you said, a PUD. But yeah, they could look into that, see where, cause where, and I know I'm being a stickler. I don't know that I want to see a bunch of little houses all over the city. I mean, I wouldn't mind them in one area. But I don't know that, like, I just want to drive down the street and see normal. Oh, there's a little one, then there's one piece of property and they've platted it and put 3 on there. I'm not too sure that I'm okay with that. But as Ms. Shandell said, looking at other communities, that would be cool, to see what they've done.
Okay, we can do some research for the next meeting.
Thank you. Any other discussions?
I just have a question. So other than the Allen Edwin addition up there, how many new houses have been built in Cedar Springs? Like, let's just cut that one out for obvious reasons, because that's like, new build. Like, everything's new, let's put it that way, but like, if we're looking at just like an existing street, like. Okay, so there are some that are like actively getting.
And Ash Street in a corner.
Okay,
Beach Street, a new one is going up.
That new
The
community,
street split and built a new house.
that new community at the end of, what's that street where the water tower is?
By the new well,
Yeah,
it's like condominium, there's 8 lots there.
nothing's been built yet,
Nothing's been built yet.
but there is 8
There's
lots
still-
there.
yeah, but my
Um,
question was mainly just are the prices of construction keeping people from building, and the answer seems to be relatively no, like within the city limits. It's a little bit different when you have a field to build, right? I mean, it's a completely different business model than trying to come in and build a lot with existing neighbors, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think there's some other factors too. I don't know how many builders are super willing to build really small houses because I think the margins aren't really there. So for that to be a profitable endeavor, or if it is there, it's razor thin. So a couple of oopsies and your profit margin's gone. So I don't know that builders are building that many of them, but I'm not 100% on that. That's just kind of some things I've heard. And I mean, the market, they're still building plenty of large houses. I don't know why sometimes, but I think it's easier also to get lending for a very conventional, traditional housing style that everyone knows and is familiar with versus something that's unique. Banks tend to be a little skittish on those too. So it's a multifaceted problem, and zoning isn't the only issue. And so our goal here is like, we can't fix everything, but we can make sure that the government is doing its part to not be the problem, right? The bank's the problem. We can't control the bank, but we can make sure that, our regulations are not, placing any unnecessary burdens on people or unnecessary requirements. And that's kind of what we're trying to do.
Any questions, discussions?
I know my house was built in 1900s. I mean, I'm got one of the older houses in town here, but my house is only like 607 square feet. So I mean, I've got a small house, but I also have a garage that's about the same size, so. So I
Don't you
mean,
have a lot of air above it? You could put 2 additions right on top. Don't look at me like that.
no, I like my small house. But yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of houses in town already that are the older ones that are smaller.
Mm-hmm. Right. That is true, because mine is. All right, we will open discussion for issues not on the agenda, correspondence. Calendar's the same, I'm assuming, Miss April. Just there. Upcoming projects. Thank you for 17 Mile.
Or
17 Mile from the light to the high school.
Yeah, that's just a temporary asphalt on the lanes there to preserve what's currently there. If we didn't do at least that, we would completely lose that road. Later this summer, That's a project through Kent County Road Commission, but they subcontracted, obviously. They're gonna do the emulsion process on that section. Same thing we did from Taco Bell to Main Street. They'll come in and chew it up and then they'll come back and put the oil on it or whatever. It's called an emulsion process. So that's gonna happen later this summer. But they needed that new stuff on there to preserve the road.
Next to Jose's, how was that coming? The building that went bye-bye.
The sale went through, but they know they need to submit, something to the city so we can tell PCI, yes, this is permittable to have a building there. I don't know what they're waiting for. July 11th, Cedar Blitz Bike Race. Yep.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
There you go.
Sound of you, Cole.
I just noticed it when I stopped and got gas.
He is right, it is on the vehicle. All right, staff comment, city manager.
The sale of 66 South Main Street has closed. So we have $325,000 in our possession. So it is no longer owned by the city. So look for some work to be done there and I know they're eager to get started. So just to let you know, I know we talked briefly here about the proposed truck route ordinance. I'm introducing that Thursday night to the city council. See how they feel about it. If they are in favor of creating an ordinance, we will proceed with that ordinance, and then we'll need to identify, exactly where that is, where trucks will be allowed and not allowed. So then if the police see trucks where they're not allowed, then they can enforce, hey, you're not supposed to be here. So, what else? We still need one more planning commission member. This is a 7-member board. There's only 6 people in seats here. So if you know of somebody that's interested, please have them fill out an application and get that to the mayor. That's a mayor appointment. And then I just wanted to ask, if you haven't seen this, I think this was yellow in your summer tax bill. Has everybody signed up for the mass notification system in the city? There's several options. We can email you notices. We can text them to you about events. When's your utility bill due? Excellent system. If you need information, there's flyers here tonight if you want to take one. It's a mass notification system. The tax bill, summer tax bill. That's all I had.
To the clerk.
Election's coming up.
See, planning commission members.
I have just really quickly, it's more of a question for Darla, but did we ever receive any kind of closure on the sidewalk issue? I can't remember if we ever got anywhere with Solon Township on that. I think I know what the answer is, but I didn't know if we ever got any sort of feedback.
I have not received anything from Solon Township.
Okay. That's what I assumed. Just wanted to ask. So thank you.
I think with the problems they're having right now with one of their issues, that probably fell off the radar like a long time ago.
Yeah,
So I'm not even,
gonna say the words.
nope, We are not.
Okay, thank you, just wanted to ask.
What was
I just want one question, Mr. Moore. A few months ago, we went through the audit on all of so many issues on, we had our hit list, and I know we've been knocking them off, or do we need to let you get those on the next level, or we're still working on the top five?
Yeah, so we've got 4 or 5 of them done, so we can just keep working down the list.
You know, pull the triggers, get going.
Yeah.
5.
I don't have it with me, but I'll talk to, yeah, Darla and I can figure it out. We'll figure out a plan to tackle the next few. We might kind of jump around if there's stuff that's in the same chapter or section, we'll kind of work at it. But yeah, there's about a dozen things we still need to do. But the really big high priority things, I think we've gotten through those now. So we'll kind of go on to the next sort of medium priority items and keep working.
We've made really good progress, and we're
Yep.
knocking these off, but I just want to go turn into a so issue.
Had it go by the wayside, yeah.
Okay,
Okay,
I
yeah,
remembered it, that's.
we'll take a look.
So, I care about it, so.
Two.
ooh, we have a city council representative, report
Yes, you
from the
do.
city council representative.
Our last council meeting, we are now reviewing the Red Flannel Festival and getting that on the road. We're in July now. August, they pretty much have to have everything set. A lot of work. And in September, they will be selecting our new Red Flannel Queen. So just beware, they're working on it. I believe there's several young ladies interested in that for the sponsorship. So, and then we did mention the bike race already. We had a lengthy discussion about displaying the red flannel medallion somewhere in the new city hall. And we have 3 that were pretty much against it, and 2 that pretty much support it. So we gotta work on that. So we'll be discussing it again on Thursday. And the other thing is tomorrow night at the amphitheater is a great band, the Gitchels. If you can get down there and hear them, they are just amazing, and that should be a wonderful evening. Yeah, yeah, and it's wonderful music to hear. No, I don't know who is this year.
DDT.
Okay.
We have a
Yes. Yes, you gotta go. You gotta go support our, oh, it's so much different down there. If it's so cool and you be thinking, oh, it's so hot, I don't want to go there, but you get down there, it's just cool and nice. I don't know what it is about that area that's cool.
right by the.
It's really so pleasant, and please come down and enjoy our beautiful amphitheater and the people, the kids are running and just having a blast.
Report of the planning consultant.
Thank you for your attention at the training session a few weeks ago. It was fun. If any of you are interested, there is also in, I think, late September, so the same folks, the Michigan Association of Planning, who provided the materials for the training. We have an annual conference. It's in Kalamazoo this year. It's 2.5 days, but you can do like a 1-day registration if you want. If you want more training and more information, you want to see us present again about something else, we encourage you to register. It's fun and you learn a lot. And that's all.
I wouldn't mind having more training here. That wasn't, I enjoyed that.
I learned a lot.
Mhm. That's a good one.
At least it's only 30 minutes.
Right. If that is everything, I will adjourn the meeting at 8:10 tonight.